Hey, everybody, welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we discuss the merits or the demerits of each. We're your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zach.
Hello, Zach.
Hello, Timothy.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is your full name, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
I guess I never thought to check.
I sent you my social security card, my mother's maiden name. I don't know why that was, but...
What's the name of your first, of your elementary school, too?
The street I grew up on.
Yeah, that's right. What's your favorite childhood candy?
I haven't seen that one.
Me neither. I just made that one up.
I like it. What's new, man? What's happening? Where are we at? What's going on?
Well, I am utterly shocked to be sitting here today.
Mm-hmm.
And also, no, just kidding. I'm utterly shocked to be sitting here today talking about the one thing
Yes.
I thought
Yes.
was a little bit more up your alley than mine.
Well, maybe.
We're
Maybe
talking
yes.
cryptids, my friend.
I love cryptids.
We're talking cryptids. And here's what I will say. I'm not going to work the cryptid beat here at Crackpot
This is
HQ.
one and done?
I don't know. It has to be the right kind of cryptid mix.
Okay.
That's the whole... I think that's where I come down now.
I respect that.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm not somebody who's going to get jazzed about, Bigfoot.
Yeah. No? Not even Bigfoot? Like, he's the granddaddy of all cryptids. Him and Mr. Loch Ness.
Yeah.
Is it Miss Loch Ness?
It's Miss.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know, actually. Like, so... I should say that, in general, I dismiss cryptids outright.
Sure.
But I like today's episode because I got a book where we have the preeminent global zoologist scholar on cryptids. Really? Like, this is not a joke.
I'm trying not to laugh. I love it. This is the way it should be done, though. I mean, really.
And I was trying. So here's what I was thinking about. I was like, okay, how do I frame this up in a way that makes sense to listeners and even to you, Tim, in the sense of like justifying my interest in cryptids now with also not being like the cryptid guy.
That guy, yeah.
So I think I managed. Yeah, I think I managed to walk that line, I guess I would say.
I respect that.
And that's because today I'm talking about the book called The Beasts That Hide from Man. And it looks cheesy.
It kind of does, not going to lie.
But guess what, folks? It is written by Karl P.N. Shuker, Ph.D.
Dr.
Shuker.
Uh-huh.
What I like about this book is the fact that he looks into cryptids that are said to exist just based on, let's say, local accounts in an area.
Yeah. There's a lot of that stuff.
And he takes them seriously, but he doesn't look into, like, werewolves or Bigfoot.
Okay.
He looks into more kind of nuanced, odd creatures that he thinks either just, like, haven't been discovered yet.
Yeah.
Or... perhaps are mistaken, the case of a mistaken identity.
Okay.
In essence. So what he the way he approaches this book is actually some of these could be real.
You think so?
Yeah, because they're actually just maybe in weird locations or there are enough, let's just say, eyewitness accounts and sightings.
Okay.
To where maybe there's some truth in it. So it's kind of cool. He approaches each cryptid as if it were like an actual animal that he has to study. He like looks at the etymology of like what the name is, gets into like, the very specific, genus, species, phylum, all that stuff. Like he gets into it and he's like, well, okay, well, if this is this and that's that, well, that'd be weird if that worked. It's like, it's actually really compelling.
That's fascinating.
And so, yeah, he gets into trying to understand some of these undiscovered animals, if you will.
Undiscovered.
But see, this is the problem that I was having, which is I say, one of the problems that I have is there's no proof, let's just say, quote unquote, proof of Bigfoot or Nessie outside of eyewitness accounts.
Yes.
And I was trying to somehow say, well, that's different than this book, but actually every cryptid in here is the same thing in the sense of like, there's no fossils.
There's no DNA evidence. There's,
correct.
No non-blurry pictures.
That's right. So in that sense, I can't say, well, these are all different because I guess they're all kind of the same in that regard.
Yeah.
However, I will admit, like, I think a lot of these, not the ones that I covered today, because I took some pretty fantastical ones, but a lot of these actually maybe could be real. So.
That's awesome.
And even the ones that I covered today, like, actually a couple of them could be real. So that's
okay.
That's
well,
that.
I will tell you whether or not they're real.
That's yeah.
In real time.
I want you to be the judge.
I will be the judge.
Choose your own adventure, my friend. And before we go any further, I will say, let me read the credentials of Dr. Shuker here, because I want you to be amazed and be surprised here.
Okay.
Dr. Karl Shuker is a zoologist and an expert in cryptozoology, animal mythology, and wildlife anomalies. The author of 10 books on mysterious phenomena. His writing has also appeared in Fate, Strange Magazine, and Fortean Times. He also acted as a consultant to the Guinness Book of World Records and the Discovery TV series Into the Unknown. He is a scientific fellow of the Zoological Society of London, a fellow of the Royal Entomological Society, and member of the International Society of Cryptozoology and Society of Authors. He lives in England.
I love that.
So that's
great.
This is about as scientific as you can get when it comes to cryptids.
That's awesome.
So what do you say we jump right in?
Let's do it, man.
Okay, let me start with a pretty wacky one here. And I guess maybe they're all just very wacky.
I'll be the judge of that.
This one I like because this one could be real, I suppose. So let's go back to the early 1940s. And this was actually, just for like historical context, this cryptid was quote unquote like discovered or made known to the West just ahead of the invasion of Ethiopia by the Italians during World War II.
Oh.
So go back to the 1940s, and a scientist, a zoologist by the name of Byron de Prorock, he led an expedition to Ethiopia right around, right before the invasion, to go look at the animals native to Ethiopia. And then while he was there, and I'll say this is kind of a theme for many of the cryptids that we're covering. A scientist goes out to study one thing, and while they're there, they hear about other types of weird animals.
Yeah.
So he's on this expedition. He keeps hearing stories from the locals about a bird that dines on human blood.
Okay.
The locals lovingly, affectionately refer to this as the death bird. And he hears really quite a few anecdotal stories that are followed up with some, I would say, fairly objective proof that something is going on. So let me break this down. In this particular area of Ethiopia, they have a large number of sheep herders. They're spending time outdoors, and they're just absolutely terrified of these death birds. So de Prorock, the zoologist, obviously is like, I got to look into this.
Yeah, I got to find this death bird.
Where does this death bird live? And they all pointed to a cave. Now,
okay.
Here's the tell, okay?
Yeah.
When you translate the name from the local language into English,
yeah,
it translates literally as Devil's Cave.
That is where I would also find it. Yeah.
We got to go in there.
That's where we got it.
Okay. So he, as a scientist who's not afraid of ghosts and all that kind of stuff, is committed to the bit. Like, hey, I don't care. I'm going in. I got to figure out what the heck's going on. They're all terrified. They're like, no, don't go in. Finally, they get a local guide to help follow them in, and this local guide is just terrified the whole time. Just like, we got to get out of here. Here's basically what they described, or I should say, here's how the cave was described to look like. And I don't know, maybe it sounds like it's home to a devil bird or something like that. Maybe not. You be the judge. It's widely held to be an abode of evil and horror, plagued by devil men who prowled its darkened recesses in the guise of ferocious hyenas by flocks of a greatly feared form of bat referred to as the death bird.
Okay.
So that's confusing. So there's these humanoid-like creatures living
that look like hyenas.
Yeah, that look like hyenas that live in Devil's Cave. There's also this bat-like creature that everyone refers to as
the devil bird.
The devil bird. The death bird. So he goes in there, and he actually does run into hyenas, this de Prorock, okay? Which is weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
And, of course, while he's there, he startles the bats.
Mm-hmm.
They leave the cave, and that's when he makes the connection. Okay, these aren't birds.
Yeah.
These are probably death bats.
Death bats. Is that better or worse?
Well, it's an anomaly.
Okay.
And let me explain why. He continues talking to the locals and gets a better understanding of what's going on. And they're showing him all these bite marks that they have on their arms. And many of these locals are actually gaunt and malnourished, and they're saying, like, these birds come out and feast on us.
Oh.
Listen to this, man. This is an eyewitness account of one particular local. He said, the goat herds told Dobhar that the death birds settle upon their bodies while they were asleep, so softly that they did not even wake, and that they were sizable beasts with wingspans of 12 to 18 inches. 12 to 18 inches that's like a bird, right? Because a bat's only a couple of inches. As for physical evidence of the death bird's sanguinivorous nature, the goat herders showed him their arms, which clearly bore a number of small wounds, the puncture marks left behind by these winged leeches once they had gorged themselves upon their helpless hosts.
Wow. So they're just getting bit by bats.
That's what you would think.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Shuker starts thinking, okay, maybe this is more like a vampire bat.
Yeah, right?
Fun fact, which I had no idea. Vampire bats are exclusive to the Americas.
Oh.
And in fact, these, blood-drinking animals, they're called sanguinivorous animals, are incredibly rare. And in fact, bats are really some of the only, let's just say, mammals that are known to do this. There aren't any birds that feast on blood, for instance. And it turns out that being a sanguinivorous type creature is a highly evolved function, because scientists believe that they used to just eat, insects and creatures that fed on human blood or animal blood.
Okay, yeah.
But
so
then
cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. They cut right to the chase. Like, we like the taste of this blood.
But you're saying those bats should not exist in Africa.
Correct.
Okay, so what's he seeing? What are the locals seeing?
Well, that's what they can't really deduce. So let me put it this way. This is so crazy. So vampire bats, like I said, so a couple of things. They know for a fact it's not a vampire bat because, like I said, there's only 3 types of bats that drink blood, and they're all in the Americas. And also, if you remember the size that I had mentioned earlier, that 12 to 18 inches.
18 inches, that's huge.
Yeah, vampire bats, I guess, are only like 3 inches, like wingspan. So it's like nothing. And they don't know what to do because people are getting hurt and injured, and they're not doing well, clearly, but they also don't know what's going on. So here's what they think is happening. So Dr. Shuker then talks about some of the known science around bats and caves and tries to figure out what's going on. And here's kind of what they figured has to be it. So if we're going to go just straight up, what's the logical possibility here? Well, he said it's possible that humans venturing in or near a cave heavily infested with bats could become infected with diseases such as lice or ticks dropping from the bats as they fly overhead.
Okay. That's almost worse.
Yeah. A parasite-borne infection of this nature would account for the bite-like wounds of the goat herds observed by Dobhar. And depending upon the precise type of infection could ultimately give rise to the emaciated condition exhibited by those affected person.
Oh, my God.
So, in other words, simply put, perhaps when the bats are flying out, they're not flying to go feast on humans. They're flying out and they're spreading ticks and lice and diseases that are transmitted through these ticks and lice and any other creatures that'll bite you. If not that, or maybe in addition to that, perhaps this could be spores of soil fungus, and I won't try the Latin name here, but I guess if it's inhaled, those spores can cause an infection of the lungs, which can then be fatal as well.
Oh, my God.
So,
oh, my God. Word to the wise, don't live near bats.
Or a place called Devil's Cave.
Yeah, there's that part too, right?
So there's no conclusive, I would say, ruling out death birds at this point in time.
Yeah.
Sightings have gone down, of course.
Okay.
But also, maybe we're talking about a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah, it's okay, well, I see the bats. I wake up and I got puncture wounds.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's not that much of a leap to come to that conclusion.
Well, another thing, too, is I know bats do wonderful things for the for humanity and the ecosystem, but also they are creepy.
They really, really are.
And I would totally blame it on them too. I'd be like, yeah, it's those death birds flying around. You see them? They're the ones biting us.
Death birds.
But apparently not. So anyways, still jury's out, man.
Okay, all right.
But given there's lack of any other evidence besides anecdotal stories, probably coming down here on, like I said, the case of mistaken identity.
Yeah, the lice, the ticks, that sounds a little bit closer to what might be going on.
Yeah, what do you think? So where's your head come down?
I'd say like 2% death birds.
From Devil's Cave.
From Devil's Cave. 2%.
2%. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So the next creature we're going to talk about here today is one that it's confusing because it has a bunch of different names and it's written in Gaelic and it's fun.
Sure.
It's fun.
Sure,
okay.
Sure.
So mythical, maybe real beast from Bloody Ireland.
No comment.
How'd I do?
That's perfect.
Okay. So this creature hailing from Ireland, get this, dude. I'm going to totally butcher this name, but I did check the internet for how it's pronounced.
I was going to say, yeah, you're probably pronouncing it wrong, so good for you.
It's spelled more or less, and there's different spellings, but like Dobharchu, like 2 words. But I believe it's pronounced Dobhar.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay.
But listen to this. This is where it gets even more confusing. The literal translation of these words is water hound.
Waterhound.
This, yeah. So you think, okay, dog, like a water dog.
I like it, yeah.
Except that it has been dubbed the Irish crocodile. And on top of that, my friends, it's actually also been nicknamed the King of the Otters.
What?
I know.
What?
So you have something that's called a Dobhar that is, when you translate, is called waterhound, but then colloquially it's called Irish crocodile, but then everybody says it's the King of the Otters.
I'm with you 100%. Just keep going, man. This is perfect.
Artist renditions of what the creature looked like are very much an otter. So just like as I'm talking about this,
picture an otter.
Just picture a beastly otter.
Okay. Like how big are we talking?
Bigger than most normal otters.
Okay.
They
like
said,
the size of an automobile?
No. Well, what the literal account, one of them here, and I don't have it spelled out in front of me, but they said something to the effect of, we saw about 100 otters together, and there was one that was like twice as big.
Like the king otter.
The literal king otter. So
that
it's like,
rules.
This isn't like, a hippopotamus. This is more like a giant otter, but not that big.
Okay.
You know what
size
I'm
of a
saying.
Dog, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, like a water hound sort of thing.
Like an Irish water hound. It's exactly right. So, all right, let's get weird here. What is this beast, you ask? I'm quoting here. It's the Master Otter, and it's evidently larger than normal otters because it's said to have appeared on Dew Hill with about 100 common-size otters in attendance, and this was the biggest one.
Yeah.
It's been described as a large male otter called the king otter, reiterating much of the information presented by other scientists, blah, blah. Totally white in color, except for its black ear tips and a black cross upon its back.
Ooh.
And that it never sleeps.
I didn't see that coming.
Now, this is where it gets a little bit weird. This is where it gets a little cryptid for us. It yields an unexpected parallel with the werewolf legend. This creature could only be killed with a silver bullet, and the killer would himself die no longer than 24 hours afterwards. So
why would you want to kill it, though? It's not like attacking people, is it?
Oh, well, do you want to hear the next story about it attacking people?
I spoke too soon.
You did, dude. That's just the setup. So one of the oldest encounters of the Dobhar occurred several hundred years ago. A woman went down to Glenade Lake to wash her clothes. She was gone for some time. Husband gets concerned, goes out on horseback to go investigate. Here is what happened next. Try not to freak out. Her husband, missing her, went to look for her and found her dead.
No.
And the beast sucking her blood. The Duragu attacked the horse, for the husband seems to have been on horseback. The horse, being frightened, ran away, but became exhausted at a village called from the circumstance Scarin, I guess is the name of the place. the Duragu, however you say it, is said to have gone through the horse and killed it.
Whoa.
It was then speared by the husband, who at the same time killed its young one. The Duragu is said by some to have been an animal half wolf, dog, half fish. By others, an enormous sea otter.
Yeah, I was thinking sea otter. But he did kill it.
He did kill it. This is where like it gets a little bit weird because you have these different encounters over the years, and it's like, well, somebody says it can only be a silver bullet, but somebody's able to stab it. But this otter, let's break this down, drank the blood of a woman. Yeah. So the otter killed
her dead,
drank her blood,
went through a horse
straight up. No apologies.
Excuse me. Yoink.
And then was maybe killed. And that's all okay. And I know it all sounds like, okay, that's just legend or folklore.
Yeah, or a giant otter.
The king of otters. King Otter. However, if you don't believe me, well, then you have to take it up with the poets, because there's actually a poem written about this very specific encounter. Well, I won't even read the poem because it's like, I'll spare you that.
It's 14 stanzas long.
It actually is not very long at all. It's kind of funny, but it's like, it's kind of in Gaelic and stuff, and I can't read half of it. So anyways, but if you don't trust the poets, then perhaps you need to take it up with a cemetery where there are actually 2 headstones in the cemetery stating that these 2 people, who are believed to be the same husband and wife from the story, were actually killed by Tuarhu.
What?
That's right. Conwall Cemetery near the town of Drummonds. And they actually got a picture of the relief and of the tombstone. And there's actually even a carved relief in the tombstone of what the beast is said to look like. Are you ready to be underwhelmed? Can you make heads or tails of this picture?
We got...
You can kind of see it's like crinkled up paw.
Black and white. I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's almost
like a cave drawing. What is this?
It's supposed to be like where the thing laid down, and maybe let's just say laid down on like wet cement.
Oh.
So it's almost like an imprint.
Like the head's on the right.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Oh, that's dumb. No, pass. You had me up till that point.
But I want to see you say that to a king otter's face.
No way, man. Assuming he doesn't go straight through me like a horse.
Yeah, have fun with that. But actually, what's really crazy though too is just the fact that like they were said to have died the 24th of September 1772.
Dang.
And so like even though I know like look,
Christmas Eve.
September 24th.
Oh, September. I heard December.
Is that when you celebrate Christmas?
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's okay. You can. Christmas is every day in my house. So yeah, no, but I would say like that's like the king otter. Now, there are different accounts of this thing. They all kind of follow the same type of storyline, which is this otter comes out of nowhere, unsuspecting human nearby.
Kills a poor maiden.
Yeah, sucks his or her blood or just devours it entirely and then goes back to its business. Huh. And it's said to live in this very specific area.
Okay.
However, let's just say like what actual scientists say is that lake is too small to actually support any type of cryptid. It's almost like
they all say.
Yeah, I mean maybe that's just a knee-jerk reaction.
What does Dr. Crypto say?
Well, he said it sounds more like myth.
Okay.
Because the accounts are too varied. This one's hard.
But then why would you put it on a tombstone? That's like next level stuff, you know?
That's right. I would say like if you're going to point to objective evidence, let's just say like a tombstone is as objective as it gets. There's nothing more scientifically
I've never heard of a lying tombstone.
Dead men tell no lies, I believe is the old expression.
Thank you.
So, but I mean, like, this is one where, like, actually this particular chapter is really short because I think Dr. Shuker's like, okay. But it's one where, like, I actually watched a video on YouTube of, like, it was like a Blair Witch style movie.
Yes.
Where it's, like, these kids going out to go party and they got these cameras and stuff. And then pretty soon you hear this, like, screeching in the background and then crying. It's really funny. So
the king otter got him.
I would be curious if we have any listeners out there, especially our friends over across the pond, that have heard of this thing and have any
Never heard of it.
I've never heard stories. No, I haven't either. Let's go on to what I think is one of my favorite sections of the entire book. And this is about man-eating plants.
Whoa.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
This stuff is really cool.
Okay. I didn't realize that fell under the realm of cryptozoology.
Right. I was thinking that was just like relegated
That'd
to
be
animals.
like cryptobiology, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think you just invented the field.
Boom. There you go. Take that, Dr. Shuker.
I'll have to ask him what the scoop is. So it turns out, obviously, we all know this, that there are a handful of plants that eat meat, let's just say.
Yes.
Venus flytrap.
Obviously.
Pitcher plants. Those are the ones that like animals crawl into, or like bugs crawl into, attracted to the nectar.
Oh, okay.
And then they get stuck.
Okay.
And then they can't get back out. Like, those are real.
Yeah.
But what's funny, actually, is that if you were to describe like a Venus flytrap to somebody a couple hundred years ago, that would sound insane.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, the Venus flytrap wasn't like noted in the historical record until 1760.
Oh, really? They're like, that's not real.
So can you imagine?
Where's it from?
I don't know offhand. I want to say like Papua New Guinea or something that, the Southeast Pacific, but I don't know for certain. However, so like, you could talk about all these things now and kind of laugh about the Irish crocodile or,
Waterhound,
anything else. But in fact, again, some of these things can be real, but just like undiscovered.
Okay.
So the first one that I think is probably the craziest is this one called the man-eating tree of Madagascar.
No. I think anything goes on Madagascar. I mean, honestly.
You know what's funny, man, is that is what essentially Dr. Shuker says at some point. He's like, yeah, we haven't discovered everything there, and there's a lot of anomalies. There are many anomalies.
Well, everything's just kind of evolving on its own. And
100%. Like, yeah, it's like a little petri dish of like cryptids.
I love this. Let's go, man. Let's do this.
First written about in a letter in 1878 by the German explorer Karl Shuker to Polish biologist Dr. Omelius Fredlowski. He wrote about this horrifying man-eating plant. And the only way that I can describe this thing and do it any sort of justice is read like the excerpt from this letter. Okay, here's.
Wait, what year is this?
1878.
1878. Okay.
Okay, here we go. If you could imagine a pineapple 8 feet high and thick in proportion resting upon its base and denuded of leaves, you will have a good idea of the trunk of the tree, a dark, dingy brown, apparently as hard as iron. And then it kind of goes on to describe a few other things. But the apex of the cone was a round, white, concave figure, like a smaller plate set within a larger one. This was not a flower, but a receptacle. And there exuded into it a clear, trickly liquid, honey sweet, and possessed of violent, intoxicating, and soporific properties. Underneath the rim of the undermost plate, a series of long, hairy green tendrils stretched out in every direction. They were 7 or 8 feet long. Above these, 6 white, almost transparent tentacles reared themselves toward the sky, twirling and twisting with a marvelous, incessant motion. Thin as reeds. Apparently, they were 5 or 6 feet tall.
What?
So imagine, what is that, like a 8-foot high pineapple.
Yeah.
You probably can't even put your arms around it. Like, it's a big, thick
it's wide.
thing.
Yep.
It has these like tentacles coming out the top with, that they can kind of wave around.
Okay.
So let me give you an account of a human sacrifice, like a ritual here as part of some of the locals and this tree. So this is an account of this tree eating a woman. Yeah. And apparently, it was just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
But then the locals bring this woman to this tree and start to begin the, ritual. And she climbs to the top of the tree, starts drinking the nectar, and then here's what happens. So the atrocious cannibal tree that had been so inert and dead came to sudden savage life. The slender, delicate palpi, with the fury of starved serpents, quivered a moment over her head, then fastened upon her in sudden coils, round and round her neck and arms. Then while her awful screams and yet more awful laughter rose wildly to be instantly strangled down again into a gurgling moan, the trendles one after another like green serpents, with brutal energy and infernal rapidity rose, retracted themselves, and wrapped around her in a fold after fold, ever tightening with cruel swiftness and the savage tenacity of anacondas feasting upon their prey. And now the great leaves slowly rose and stiffly erected themselves in the air, approached one another, and closed about the dead and hampered victim with the silent force of a hydraulic press and the ruthless purpose of a thumbscrew.
What? That is some wild description there.
It's wild. That's the only way to describe it.
So crazy.
These tendrils wrapping around this woman, and then like...
I mean, assuming this isn't real, just for a second, like what would possess this guy to write this back to, where was it, Germany, Poland, something
to
like
Poland, yeah, a guy in Poland.
Is he just messing with them?
Well, yeah, either he's lying or he saw something or heard. Maybe he said he saw it, kind of a thing, and just heard about like local accounts. I don't know. You're right. Like that's something.
That's really weird.
And actually, a lot of this book is, he looks into like old timey letters of a scientist writing to another scientist.
Really?
So it's like some of this stuff, it's like, well, is it real or is it embellished?
Yeah.
It's
Are
hard.
they just trying to tell tall tales or something?
No kidding. I mean, it can be really hard to actually figure out.
That is so weird.
But I mean, like, look, if you don't actually believe this account, then you're not going to believe Chase Salmon Osborne, who was the former governor of Michigan.
Okay.
Who also went on a trip to Madagascar to find this tree. He went down there to go find it. He was amplified. Now, he never personally laid eyes on it, but he said that all the locals that he encountered talked about it, as did the Christian missionaries.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't take him to it?
I guess not.
Oh, come on.
So this is like causing a bit of a stir across like biologists and zoologists and stuff.
Well, yeah.
The 1930s through the basically 80s. So it was written about again in the 1980s by University of Chicago professor Dr. Roy P. McCall. And basically he said, look, this tree's never been found. But there was an expedition by a Czech biologist in 1988 who learned of a retired British military figure who went to Madagascar and had apparently pictures of these plants with skeletons outside the base of the trunk.
No way.
So now he hasn't seen the pictures, but they're said to exist.
That rules.
So you have, a German biologist in the 1800s.
Yeah.
That apparently saw this thing.
Sure. Wrote a great description.
That's right. Then you have the former governor of Michigan who went on an expedition to go find this thing. And then a retired British military intelligence person.
You said like the locals were still talking about it. And the,
Christian missionaries.
So it's like, maybe?
That's where it's like you can't. But this is where it enters like Beast of Bray Road territory.
Yeah.
People talk about it.
Yeah.
Does that make it true? No, of course not. However,
what are they all talking about?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't go in there. Don't go to that. Don't touch that tree.
Don't touch the devil cave.
Don't go in that cave.
I don't know, man. I'm putting this at like a solid 30%.
Well, I will say that as unplausible, unlikely, implausible. There we go. As it all sounds, I will say, like Dr. Shuker even said, he goes, we haven't discovered everything on this planet.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Yeah.
And he was postulating, too, if perhaps maybe there was, and this sounds kind of unlikely, but maybe it was misnoted somewhere. Maybe it wasn't Madagascar. Maybe it's Papua New Guinea. Maybe there was some confusion. He goes, that could be another place where maybe this thing hides out. But I don't know.
I love that. Yeah, I'm going to say 35%.
Okay. Well, then if you're that high on that one, you're going to be even higher on this one. This is the Nicaraguan dog devouring tree.
Yes.
Dr. Andrew Wilson first wrote of this back in 1892. And he relayed his own personal account of running into the actual tree itself. So he was out in the jungle.
He saw it. With his own eyes.
Listen, worse than that.
His own dog.
He was running around with his dog.
Oh, no.
In Nicaragua.
Oh, spoiler, guys.
So he's out there. I don't know. He's probably looking at butterflies or something. He's not there to go find this tree.
No.
He starts hearing, the cries of his dog.
Oh, no.
He panics, looks around. He sees his dog is entangled in the branches of a tree. And the best description that I can give the listener right now is that almost like a weeping willow type tree.
Yeah.
Only what happened was this dog was completely tangled up in some of the branches. So that's not good, obviously.
No good.
And I'll just tell you what happened here. It might be a little hard to believe, but this is fact. This is science fact, not science fiction. So, and actually, let me say real quick too before I tell you this part. So he actually attempted to cut the dog out of the tree, out of the branches.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
When the dog was extracted from the coils of the plant, Mr. Dunstan saw to his horror that its body was bloodstained, while the skin appeared to be actually sucked or puckered in spots, and the animal staggered as if from exhaustion. In cutting the vine, the twigs curled like living, sinuous fingers about Mr. Dunstan's hand, and it required no slight force to free the member from their clinging grasp, which left the flesh red and blistered. The tree, it seems, is well known to the natives, who may relate the stories of its death-dealing powers. Its appetite's voracious and insatiable, and in 5 minutes it will suck the nourishment from a large lump of meat, rejecting the carcass as a spider does that of a used-up fly.
Wow.
So this Nicaraguan dog-devouring tree sucks your blood, and then it leaves the carcass.
Yeah, well, it's not going to digest the bones or anything like that.
That's right.
Of course, it just needs the blood.
That's right.
That only makes sense.
So that one is weird.
I'm gonna put that at a 9%.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point too. So Nicaragua is more well known and discovered than we said Madagascar or Papua New Guinea. So he was kind of rolling this one out as probably not being real. Aside from some local accounts and this one scientist, not a lot else to go off of here. But one that he said, okay, this one actually might be real, and we just haven't found one that actually exists yet.
Okay.
Is a mouse-eating plant.
Oh.
So he said there's several tales of protein-eating plants. The one that he said is most viable probably is the Indian mouse-eating plant. And it doesn't have as much information as some of the other cryptids in the stories, because if you think about it, it doesn't take, some horrific narrative about a ritual or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But what he was saying was, maybe there's a plant very similar to that of those pitcher plants where a fly kind of crawls down into it. Given the size of mice obviously being quite small, perhaps there's a similar type of plant that's just small enough to where
it smells good or whatever, and they just go in and
then they don't come out.
They don't come.
The literal perfect mousetrap. Finally, it's been
That's what
invented.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
How do I plant these around my house?
That's right. Well, do you have mice? You guys have mice?
No, not at the new place.
I'm just kidding. I was going to call you out. So yeah, I don't know. What is in fact true is that this could be real, and the London Horticultural Hall in England comes down and says, well, if it's to be true, the mouse is attracted by a pungent odor that emanates from the blossom, which encloses a perfect hole just big enough for the mouse to crawl into. The mouse goes in, the trap bristle-like antennae enfold in it, right? Very similar to a Venus flytrap almost.
Yeah.
Struggles, and finally the mouse is dead, and then the digestive fluids kick in. So
wow.
Not much else to go off of, but that seems like of all of these,
it's possible.
The most possible.
Yeah, maybe.
Indeed. But there aren't any other plants known to actually eat anything. And he was saying, too, they can explain the mechanics of a Venus flytrap and these other types of plants. They're not sentient, obviously.
Right.
But they do have very specific triggers and things. And it's just almost just
nerves. Not nerves, but
I want to say exactly. But none of it's not thinking, it's not.
Yeah.
And when you heard about the accounts of the sinuous, branches wrapping around and acting like, fingers, no plant on this planet does that.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. But Tim, let's talk about here the last one, which is said to be perhaps real.
Okay.
And in fact, it is the subject of the cover here.
Okay.
And
what is that, Dune? What is it?
Oh, good. Very good reference point. He actually brings up Dune in this book. Before we go any further, Tim, this is not a leading question, okay?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of worms?
I am not afraid of worms.
You should be.
Should I? Okay.
Because there's one that will kill you dead in your tracks.
Is that
like
so?
Straight up, almost instantaneous. This is the big one. Okay. According to Dr. Shuker, this is the most extraordinary member of all the cryptids that he's written about in this entire book. Like, this is the one, okay? It is, drum roll please, the Mongolian Death Worm.
That is the best name I've ever heard.
Mongolian Death Worm. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's start with where does it live? Mongolia.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Specifically, though, the Gobi Desert.
I love it.
And the Gobi Desert, of course, it's growing continuously every year. It's in northern China, southern Mongolia, and it lives in the sand, which is a little weird considering worms typically live in soil.
Yeah.
However, according to the former, I'll tell you more about. Well, let's start with what it looks like. So, according to the former Mongolian Prime Minister, Damdin Bazar, he described the worm back in 1922 as follows. It's shaped like a sausage, about 2 feet long, has no head nor legs, and is so poisonous that merely to touch it means instant death.
No.
It lives in the most desolate parts of the Gobi Desert.
Okay.
Let's talk about the details of this baby. Okay.
So it's not that. I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
As far as worms go, but it's not.
And this is where some of the accounts differ, right? But it's not. And this is what Dr. Shuker said. Like, the size of this thing isn't so big that it would suddenly be impossible, because there are worms that are this size that they have found that live around the world and that are totally harmless. Yep.
Oh, Lord.
Mm-hmm. But it was described as follows. It's a sausage-like worm over 0.5 meter, so about 18 inches long, as thick as a man's arm, resembling the intestine of a cattle. Now, this is cool, too. So the local name for this worm also apparently means cattle's intestine death worm.
Okay.
So it actually according to what people have seen, looks like that. Its color is dark red, like blood. It moves in odd ways. It has no visible eyes, nostrils, or mouth. It lives in desolate sand dunes and in the hot valleys of the Gobi Desert with saxaul plants underground. It's possible to see it only during the hottest months of the year, June and July. Later, it burrows into the sand and sleeps. It gets out on top of the ground mainly after the rain, when the ground is wet. It's dangerous because it can kill people and animals instantly at a range of several meters.
What? How? What, it jumps at you? It spits on you? What is it?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Well, yeah, I would. I got a trip planned to the Gobi Desert coming up next summer.
Yeah, aren't you camping out there next year or something like that? Let me explain exactly how this works. Here's been some observations about how this worm attacks, to answer your questions. One old woman called Purette claimed that when the worm attacks, it raises half of its body up through the sand, inflates itself, and secretes a bubble of poison from one end, ultimately squirting it forth in a stream at its unfortunate victim.
Dang.
So it's basically spraying poison at its victim.
Okay.
Purette also claimed that anything contacted by this deadly fluid turns yellow instantly and looks as if it's been corroded by acid.
Dang.
The death worm can kill people by touch. A local boy who had accidentally touched a death worm that had found its way into a box in his parents' campsite had concealed itself within that box. The boy died instantaneously, as did his parents, as they attempted to kill it.
Wow.
There was an expedition, I guess, in which one of the geologists had died. He'd been idly poking the sand with an iron rod, and then suddenly, without any warning, he dropped down to the ground. Colleagues raced over to see what was going on. Of course, he was dead. They peered at the sand that he'd been prodding. However, it began to churn violently, and out of it emerged a huge, fat worm.
No way. No way.
But remember, the man had not touched that worm directly.
No,
so what could possibly explain it? Now, I know all of this sounds ridiculous.
That's wild.
There's no question about that. It all sounds completely ridiculous. But like, to quote the Prime Minister of Mongolia, he said, "You laugh only because you know nothing and understand nothing." The Allegorai Korkai, that's like the local name for it. It's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing. Don't laugh at it.
It doesn't mess around. So this is where then Dr. Shuker's like, okay, let's break this down. How could this actually work?
What does it eat?
This is actually, I'm glad you asked, because he theorizes that perhaps it eats the Saxol plant's roots, which are actually poisonous.
Okay.
So maybe by ingesting these roots,
it builds up its poison.
Exactly right.
Sure. Wow.
Now, so there's that. That would explain the poison.
Yes.
Now, what he also said was, okay, we had a child die. Mm-hmm. We also had a scientist, a geologist, die by like poking the ground with a stick, a metal rod. So maybe this maybe this is a worm that shoots out electricity.
Oh, interesting.
And that sounds bizarro, of course, because you don't think a worm is doing that. But of course, we have electric eels.
Electric eels.
And then he goes even further. I can't even believe it, though. It's actually really funny. He's saying, well, okay, maybe what if it's not really a worm? Maybe it's just a misnomer.
Oh, like?
Could be a salamander, for example.
Okay.
Maybe, and this is probably the most logical, is it's a snake.
Everyone says no eyes, no mouth, right? That is a common description.
Right.
So I'm saying not a snake or a salamander.
Right. But it's like if it shoots poison, okay, we can maybe kind of explain that. Electricity, okay, that one is actually hard to pin down because there are so few types of animals that actually do that. But he said, you know what? Perhaps it's not that unlikely. So what he said, I'd never heard of this before, man. This is weird. There have been scientists that have been studying snakes recently, and they've noticed this situation where it turns out that some rattlesnakes actually generate electricity in their rattler by rattling it back and forth.
What?
Yeah, this is weird. So what Dr. Shuker's saying is, he said, perhaps the death worm gains an electrical charge via the phenomenon of triboelectricity, aka friction, generating electricity by the rubbing of its body against the enveloping sands as it burrows beneath the surface. And then he gets into the science of rattlesnakes. He said that some scientists have proposed that rattlesnakes generate electrostatic charge that can be utilized in detecting prey in hiding places. They revealed that a motionless rattle has no charge, but when it rapidly vibrates, the positive charges of 50 to 100 volts are produced, indicating the vibrating rattle generates electrostatic charge.
So it's like walking around with wool socks in the winter.
That's exactly what it's like.
Oh, my God.
So
come on, really?
If we're going to say, all right, this thing shoots poison,
maybe
it could.
Maybe.
Actually, and in fact, some types of snakes do, he was saying, shoot poison even into the eyes of its, prey to stun them or blind them. Wow. So that's not outlandish.
Sure.
Electrical charges.
Sure, then you touch it, boom, you're dead.
Exactly.
Wow.
You hit it with the pole, you touch it with the pole.
Yeah, a metal rod, right?
There you go. You drop instantly 150, 200 volts, just like that.
Dang.
And guess what, folks? I'm sorry to be the messenger here. You don't like it? Take it up with the Mongolian Prime Minister.
He's a believer. I don't know. Okay, well, let me ask you. Where do you put that one?
This one, I mean, this is like Dr. Shuker's unicorn.
That's the
silver
ace
tuna,
up his sleeve, right?
The whole
The silver tuna.
That is the one where he is like, I think that it's probably not real, but it could be, and because there are like possible explanations for all of this.
Yeah.
I will speak for him. He doesn't say this, but I would say he's probably like 20% because that's like the most written about cryptid that he's like had to look into. And there's even this Czech zoologist who's like the subject matter expert on the topic that he's been corresponding with, has gone on multiple expeditions to find this thing, and they can't find it. They've been going out in the desert.
It's like a giant snipe hunt. I mean, first of all, the desert's enormous.
That's part of the problem, right? And then what? You go out in June and July.
Right.
It's 200,000 degrees out there, digging around in the sand.
Maybe you'll find an electric worm. Maybe you won't.
And I guess what? Best case scenario, you find it and you live. But that's probably not going to happen. Let's be real.
Yeah, right?
If these accounts are to be believed, you're toast.
Oh, my God.
So-
Literally toast.
Yeah, you are burnt to a crisp.
I'm putting that one at a solid 50%.
I think this one, given there's a drawing on the cover,
Yeah.
means it's real. So,
It's right up there, man.
so I'm coming down 100.
Well, that was good. That was good.
There's plenty more in here, too, but those were some of my favorite ones. And I would say, like, this book is actually super interesting. Like, it's one of the few books that's actually like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat. And I've spared some of the scientific stuff, too. But a lot of eyewitness accounts about these cryptids.
That's what makes it fascinating.
Yeah. And these aren't like, I know, okay, the Master Otter sounds kind of made up. But the Mongolian Death Worm sounds real.
Sounds real.
The Deathbird one sounds like it actually could be real.
It's possible.
Right?
It's oddly possible.
The man-eating plants are a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, some of the descriptions are a stretch, but I'm like, hey, maybe. Maybe.
You can't totally rule some of this stuff out yet. So
I love it.
Me too.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We love it when you do. We love it when you listen. If you haven't already, take a moment, hit that subscribe button, like us, share us, rate, review, subscribe. That's what I'm trying to say. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local zoologist about our podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.